Back in 1912, this absolutely massive, beautiful ship, the Titanic, slipped quietly into the freezing, pitch-black water. You know, just resting somewhere down in all that endless freezing dark. Because, the ocean is just wildly huge and ridiculously deep. People had definitely gone out there before, spending so much time scanning the vastness, but they always came back empty-handed. Then you have this super smart ocean adventurer, Robert Ballard. The guy practically lived for deep water mysteries, and he had this massive, lifelong dream of finally tracking down the Titanic. But the catch? Dragging those wild underwater robots all the way down there costs a totally insane amount of cash. He desperately needed a serious backer to help foot the bill for all that specialized high-tech gear. So he takes this wild swing and goes straight to the United States Navy. I mean, they obviously have the massive ships and all the absolute best, most powerful deep-sea gear on the planet. But the Navy wasn't just going to give him access to all that amazing equipment for free. They wanted a little favor in return. And here is where we get the secret deal. The military had actually lost a couple of their own submarines resting way down in the deep dark. They basically told Robert he could borrow all their incredible ships and equipment, but he had to quietly hunt down their missing subs before he could even think about chasing his Titanic dream. Robert totally goes for it, signing on for this highly classified mission. He sails out into the middle of nowhere with his crew, and they drop this super advanced robotic camera down on this crazy long wire, sinking it deep into the shadows. And sure enough, after prowling the pitch-black ocean floor for what felt like forever, they actually managed to pinpoint that initial missing submarine, sitting right there in the dark. Now, while he's studying the wreckage of that sub, Robert notices something wildly important. He sees that the really heavy metal chunks sank straight down, landing super close to where the sub went under. But all the lighter pieces, they caught the underwater currents and drifted way farther out into the deep darkness. And what that did was create this incredibly long, scattered trail of broken pieces trailing across the pitch-black seafloor. It was acting just like breadcrumbs dropped along a path. Looking at this glowing trail on his monitors, Robert realized he had found the perfect trick for finding lost ships. Because honestly, picking up a miles-long trail of wreckage is way easier than stumbling blindly onto a single dark ship. So he tests this brand new trick on the other missing submarine. And boom! It's the exact same pattern. The heavy stuff is grouped tight together, and the lighter stuff is scattered way out into the darkness. With the classified mission completely finished, Robert was finally cleared to use this genius debris trail trick to hunt for the Titanic. But, and there's always a but, he only had 12 days left on his ship rental. The clock was ticking so fast, adding this crazy, tense countdown to his lifelong dream. Now, there was a French team out there at the exact same time, dragging sonar around trying to ping the giant shape of the ship, but they were coming up completely empty. Robert just went a totally different direction. He sent his own robot, Argo, straight down into the deep, beaming bright lights to send live video of the dark mud right back to their screens. And let me tell you, dragging Argo back and forth, line by line, across that endless ocean floor, it is just so slow. It's unbelievably boring. Imagine just sitting there in the dark for hours on end, staring at glowing screens that show absolutely nothing but miles and miles of empty mud. The remaining time was basically disappearing fast. The crew was getting super tired, getting pretty anxious, but Robert just kept them totally locked in. He was absolutely convinced Titanic left a trail, and they just had to keep their eyes peeled for those tiny little fragments. Then, in the dead middle of the night in early September 1985, while most of the ship is totally asleep, a guy named Stu is sitting there staring at the monitor. And suddenly, right there in the dark mud, this blurry, strange shape slides onto the glowing screen. And it wasn't just some rock, it was a solid piece of metal. Before they could even process it, more pieces started lighting up the monitor, connecting into this incredibly vivid, long trail of wreckage. The sheer rush of adrenaline in that room, they practically sprinted to wake Robert up, pulling him in to just stand there and stare at the screen in pure disbelief. They gently steered Argo straight along that trail until this absolutely giant, round, rusty object loomed right out of the underwater shadows. It was a boiler. Think of it like a huge oven that made steam to power the ship. And the exact shape of it? It was a flawless, undeniable match for Titanic.
The control room just completely erupted. People were cheering, hugging, jumping around. It was this massive release of pure joy, knowing that after 73 incredibly long years sitting alone in the dark, the Titanic had finally actually been seen again.
But then, in the middle of all that crazy celebrating, somebody glanced up at the clock on the wall, and the hands were showing almost the exact time the Titanic had slipped beneath the water in 1912. Just like that, all the cheering stopped entirely, and this really heavy, quiet respect settled over the room. The very next day, they carefully let Argo follow the rest of the trail, and slowly, this absolutely massive, dark shape materialized out of the water. It was the majestic front of the ship, but it was completely covered in these bizarre orange rust formations, just hanging heavily off the decaying metal.
Hovering over it, you just wander visually through this haunting space, gazing at the silent decks where people used to stroll, the totally empty spaces where the lifeboats once hung, and then the violently twisted metal over by the back section where the ship had completely ripped apart. It all just looked so perfectly frozen in time.
And down on the sand, where the wooden decks had basically decayed away in the water, there were just these incredibly ordinary things scattered around. Little teacups, china plates, and resting right there together, a pair of highly detailed old leather shoes. Finding those shoes just hit so different, you know? It made the whole discovery stop feeling like just a cool science mission and suddenly made it feel so intensely serious and deeply human. He absolutely wanted to shock the world with thousands of brilliant camera flashes, proving they really found her, but he made this incredibly firm rule to leave every single object exactly where it was, completely untouched, out of respect. It's just wild how this incredibly clever search trick instantly made Robert a global legend. And honestly, the Navy guys were pretty thrilled in the shadows too, because this secretive mission somehow managed to brilliantly solve both of these massive, totally separate ocean mysteries without anyone even realizing it. So even though the wreck is down there, slowly decaying, fading back into the deep, dark water, and even though some folks later went down and totally disrespected Robert's wishes by taking things away, the fact remains that chasing tiny, scattered clues unlocked this massive piece of hidden history. It's just wild what's hiding out there in the dark, waiting to be found. Anyway, if you loved going on this deep dive, definitely do me a solid and hit that like button, share this with a friend who loves a good mystery, and subscribe so we can keep uncovering cool stuff together.